What if the school bully picked the wrong person to mess with? Someone who could turn his world upside down. In the halls of Clearview High in Houston, the smell of freshly cut grass and hot asphalt follows Maya Williams's quiet arrival. She hugs her backpack to her chest and weaves through groups that have already decided who's sitting where at lunch and which party to hit on Saturday. Bryce Carter rules those halls. Football jersey, the kind of smile that never hears no. The second his eyes land on the new girl with the tight braid, he spots an easy target. New town, no allies, zero defense. A shoulder check at her locker is just his warm-up for the show he wants to put on at break. But Bryce ignores the invisible thread trailing Maya. It isn't a superpower or a martial arts belt. It's something simple, yet lethal to anyone who confuses fear with respect. That thread ties Maya to the one name that even makes the bully lower his voice. Principal Abrams, a man with no patience for cruelty disguised as jokes. The morning drags on and the tension climbs. Every time Bryce laughs, it echoes, but Maya just watches. She counts steps, memorizes faces, sorts who laughs out of fear from who laughs for convenience. By the time the bell rings for the next class, she already knows exactly where to stand, so the bully's stumble happens in front of the right witnesses. Maya stepped into the hallway, still mapping every detail of her new school. In the first minutes, her mission was simple: find her locker, figure out which cafeteria table was safe, and above all, clock the voices she'd be better off avoiding. One look was enough to spot the school's center of gravity. Bryce Carter. He filled the space like someone who never had to say, "Excuse me." Leaning on the lockers, flanked by teammates in varsity jackets, he fired off jokes that burst into loud, nervous laughs. Maya already knew this script. Starting quarterback, magazine cover face, last name on the booster's plaque. The tell was in his friend's tense shoulders, in their rush to agree before they even got the joke. Power is a cologne that spreads fast. She planned to pass without disturbing that orbit, but the universe arranged a collision. A shoulder slammed into hers the instant the bell rang. No accident. Her book slid, fanning across the polished floor. Laughter popped along the hallway as she knelt, fighting to keep her face neutral and her heartbeat steady. When she looked up, expensive shoes were inches from her notebooks. Bryce watched her, a tight smile on his face, like he'd just picked the next move in a game whose rules only he knew. Faces. Well, what do we have here? Maya froze. She didn't need to look to know whose voice it was. Bryce Carter. The voice was calm and playful, but with a sharp edge, like a lion toying with its prey. She could hear his friends laughing behind him. Slowly, she lifted her gaze. Bryce loomed over her, arms crossed, flashing that annoying grin she'd seen on bullies who knew they ran the school. "Don't think I've seen you before," he said. "You knew?" Maya didn't answer. She just grabbed her books and stood, walking past him without a word. But Bryce wasn't finished. "Hey, where are your manners?" he called, his voice echoing down the hall. "I asked you a question." Maya kept walking. She'd played this game before. The best way to handle guys like him was not to play. But Bryce didn't like being ignored. That's when she felt it. A hard tug on her backpack, pulling her back. Not enough to hurt, but enough to show Bryce wasn't letting it go. Maya stopped. Slowly, she turned. For a moment, the hallway seemed silent. Even the students who hadn't. The kids crowding the corridor slowed once they sensed what was brewing. Maya faced Bryce, chin high. For a split second, a flicker of surprise, maybe respect, crossed his bored eyes. "You shouldn't have done that," she said, low but clear, slicing through the murmur. Bryce arched an eyebrow, let out a lazy chuckle, and motioned to his friends. "Oh, yeah? And why not?" he taunted. Maya held his stare. The silence that settled felt heavier than any answer. Bryce tilted his head, sizing her up. "You're weird," he pronounced, drawing snickers from the crowd. Unfazed, Maya pivoted on her heel and walked away. She knew this was far from over, and Bryce had no idea what kind of trouble he'd just signed up for. The rest of the day sped by like a movie on fast forward. In class, she parked herself in the back, speaking only when necessary. At lunch, she chose the cafeteria's edge, the perfect spot to observe without being seen. From the center, Bryce ruled the loudest table. Jokes flew, laughs boomed, as if nothing could touch them. Every now and then Maya felt his gaze cut across the room, but he didn't move. Yet. When the final bell rang, she took a deep breath. She slipped out before the hallway jammed, heart lighter as she left the building, though she knew the real duel was just beginning. The hallway fell silent when Maya straightened, unhurried, and locked eyes with Bryce at the center of his group. Shock flashed across his face, curiosity that didn't fit the smirk that followed. "You shouldn't have done that," she said, steady. Bryce raised an eyebrow, laughed slowly, and needled. "Oh yeah? And why?" She kept staring, an unspoken answer that drew little giggles from the crowd. Bryce cocked his head, trying to read her. "You're strange," he declared, pleased with himself. Without giving him the trophy of a comeback, Maya turned and left. She didn't have to look back to know the story would go on. Bryce still didn't grasp how big a step he'd just taken in the wrong direction. The rest of the classes rolled by like a sped-up reel. Maya stayed in the last row, said the bare minimum, hood almost covering her eyes. During the break, she found a table near the cafeteria exit, the ideal perch to watch without being noticed. In the center, Bryce reigned at a wide table, laughing with his posse. Now and then Maya felt his gaze slide her way, promising a new clash that never materialized. When the last bell rang, Maya got out before the hallway filled. The relief of crossing the gate was real, but she knew that was only round one. Bryce's game was on the field, and hers was just about to start. When the chatter faded, every head turned toward the hallway. Maya stared Bryce down until he blinked, surprised to meet resistance. She spoke softly, but each word vibrated. "You shouldn't have done that." Bryce lifted an eyebrow and let a slow laugh roll out. "And why not?" Maya didn't answer. The silence grew heavy. Classmates swapped eager grins, waiting for the next insult. Bryce tilted his head, curious. "You're weird, you know that?" Snickers burst out. Maya spun on her heel and walked away calmly, sure Bryce had no clue how big a mistake he'd just made. The next hours blurred gray. In the back row, she raised her hand only when called, eyes glued to her notebook. During break, she claimed a table by the window where she could watch unseen. Bryce owned the cafeteria. Loud voice, easy jokes, the biggest table under his control. Every so often, Maya felt his look slide over her, weighing the girl who'd stood up to him. Still, he stayed put, for now. When the final bell rang, Maya slipped through the halls toward the gate. The relief lasted just a moment. She knew the story wasn't ending there. Something was setting up outside, and Bryce, clueless, was walking straight into it. Houston's heat clung to the skin and made the asphalt shimmer. Maya crossed the street toward the bus stop, rummaging in her bag for her phone. A voice called from behind her. "Hey, new girl." She turned. Bryce stood there with that loose grin, hands in his pockets, 3 friends watching from behind him, hoping for some fun. Maya let out a slow breath. "What do you want?" Bryce stepped forward, trying to look calm. "They're saying you've got a bit of an attitude problem." She stayed silent. His grin widened, hoping for a reaction. "Gonna ignore me, think you're better than me?" Maya let out a quick laugh, real, not nervous, and the sound made Bryce hesitate before he put his tough guy face back on. "I think," she said, weighing every syllable, "you should turn around right now." His eyebrows shot up. He took one more step, his shadow falling across her face. "Oh yeah? And why would I do that?" She leaned in just a few inches, almost whispering. "Because you have no idea who I am." Bryce chuckled, shaking his head. "Then enlighten me. Who are you?" Without answering, Maya stepped back, raised her phone, and tapped one icon. A deep growl cut through the air. A black Dodge Charger Hellcat slid to the curb out of nowhere, turning every head on the street. The passenger door popped open with a click louder than any threat. The tinted window rolled down slowly, and there was Vin Diesel behind the wheel. Bryce froze, and Maya turned to him with a calm smile she'd never shown before. "Still think I'm weird?" she asked, unhurried. The question hung in the hallway. The kid who usually cracked jokes at everyone's expense felt the floor drop away. His jaw tightened, shoulders drew in, eyes flicking between Maya and the movie star idling in that black Charger. Behind him, his buddies went cold. They traded nervous glances, looking for an exit that wasn't there. Bryce stepped back half a pace, no one followed. Maya slung her backpack over one shoulder, breathing steady like she'd just finished a light workout. Her gaze was firm. Not a challenge, just a fact. This stage wasn't Bryce's anymore. Inside the car, Vin Diesel rested his hands on the wheel. He didn't need to speak up. His presence filled every inch, squeezing out whatever laugh Bryce might have tried. Just a sec," Bryce stammered, as if asking permission from his own bravado. Maya almost smiled again, but saved it like a card for the next play. The engine kept rumbling, promising movement. Each second stretched the tension. In that heavy quiet, everyone realized the story had a new owner. Bryce forced a weak smile, but his gaze slipped when it hit Maya. He looked at her the way you stare at an old photo and spot a detail you'd missed for years. Maya leaned just close enough for him to hear. "Still think I'm just some nobody?" Bryce's throat worked. No words came out. Then Vin spoke. "Get in, kid." It wasn't an invitation, it was fate. Maya walked past the stunned crowd, opened the Charger's door, and climbed in. The seatbelt clicked. Vin dropped it into gear. The engine's roar swept through the hallway, carrying whispers and wide eyes as the car rolled out of the lot. For a few blocks, only Houston's blurry late-afternoon skyline flashed by, orange streaks sliding over the windows. Maya drummed her fingers on her knee, waiting for the tension to land somewhere outside her. Vin kept his eyes on the road, hands steady on the wheel. Every stoplight felt like it raised a question no one dared ask. Near the next intersection, Maya breathed slow, ready to break the silence, though she had no idea which truth would fit first. Vin tapped the wheel like an improvised drum solo. "You good?" he asked, eyes still forward. Maya nodded, let out a short laugh. "Total soap opera scene, huh?" Vin's crooked smile appeared. "Maybe a little." She turned to the window, watching the city lights slide by like neon ribbons. "I just didn't want them finding out like that." Vin glanced at her. "So what? Let that guy puff up his ego on you?" Maya reclined her seat and sighed. "I was going to answer him back. I was just waiting." "Waiting for what, Maya?" She shrugged. "The right moment." A low chuckle escaped him. "Sounds like me at 17. She raised one eyebrow, half smiling. Terrible comparison. His laugh filled the car, and for a few miles the silence that followed was almost comfortable. Still, both knew Bryce Carter wouldn't swallow humiliation. The fear he'd felt had probably already turned to anger. The automatic gate slid open, and the car eased into the garage of a minimalist house in Houston's suburbs. Maya unclicked her belt but stayed still, hands in her lap, as if the silent engine wasn't proof enough she was safe. A distant siren outside reminded them the night kept moving. Inside the parked car, silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Vin broke it first. "Still thinking about something?" Maya let out a heavy breath. He didn't break things off with me." Vin kept his eyes on the street before answering. Steady voice. "No, but I didn't say it was over either." She lifted her brows. "You think I should hit back?" Leaning back, Vin spun the wheel with his palm, thinking. "You gotta be ready. Guys like him hate losing." Maya nodded, mouthing silent words, testing her own resolve. Next morning, walking through the school gate, she expected whispers. She didn't expect the whole hallway to turn at once. Murmurs swept through the student groups like fire through dry leaves. Some just curious, some relishing the drama. Bryce's crew burning with raw anger. They clustered by the lockers. Jocks in draft form, bully wannabes, broad shoulders, narrow eyes. Bryce owned the center, leaning on the metal with arms crossed. When he spotted Maya, he didn't smile. He just stared. She held his gaze a heartbeat past comfortable, then headed for class. The whispers grew behind her, sprouting like grass after rain. Maya didn't slow. If Bryce wanted the long game, so did she, and she'd just made her opening move. The clatter of silverware in the cafeteria barely covered the tension rising. Maya balanced her tray, aiming for the only empty table. Ryan, Bryce's muscle-bound goon, stuck out a foot like it was an accident. The polished floor turned into a trap. The tray jolted. Juice almost went flying. Laughter rippled through the room before she even got her balance back. Students swiveled their phones, ready to film another cringe-worthy clip. Ryan flashed every tooth, sure he'd draw applause. "Got nothing to say, princess?" he prodded. Maya steadied the cup that was about to spill and stared at the guy with an annoyingly calm look. "Funny," she said lightly. "I thought evolution had wiped out cavemen." A chorus of "ooh" swept across the hall. Ryan's grin deflated. Bryce, lounging against the doorway, tilted his head while plotting the next move, his eyes cold as freshly sharpened steel. Without giving them a chance, Maya cut through the maze of tables, ignoring the whispers that rose like smoke. She sat, broke her bread, and took the first bite, treating the laughter as background noise. Still, the shiver crawling up her neck reminded her that Bryce never swallows insults in silence. And right then, lunchtime was turning into the prelude to something bigger. The whole hallway seemed to hold its breath when the dismissal bell rang. Maya had already braced for the attack. The harassment routine never missed. Even so, the damage was shocking. A bent locker door, pen marks crisscrossing the metal, notebooks scattered like cruel confetti across the cold floor. Students crowded around, forming a gauntlet of stares, co-conspirators, scared, curious, but no one stepped in. She knelt without hurry, picked up every page, smoothed the crumpled corners, stacked the books by size. No shaking hands, no anger showing, just an almost clinical focus. When she looked up, she saw Bryce at the far end, arms crossed, certain he'd spark some meltdown. He got indifference instead. Maya locked the wrecked locker and left, depriving the crowd of the show they'd come for. Later in the kitchen, the clock's ticking competed with her fingers drumming on the table. Vin Diesel, leaning on the counter, tracked her every move. "They trashed my locker today," she said, like someone talking about the weather. His eyebrow arched in an ironic curve. "That's the masterstroke?" Maya smirked. "For now." Vin cocked his head, waiting for more. She drew a deep breath. A spark lit her eyes. "I'm gonna let him dig his own grave." His smile widened. "That's how you do it." Maya leaned back, feeling the old warmth of command run through her bones. Bryce Carter believed he made the rules. In truth, he wouldn't even see the opening move. She knew the type. Loud voice. Confidence borrowed from the easy laughter of onlookers. People who feed off the crowd's reaction, who draw respect from fear. They look like walls but hide cracks. Sooner or later they stumble, and Maya knew how to wait. The next morning she walked through the gates of Clearview High with a light step, as if yesterday had only been a warm-up. The whispers were still there, but their tone had changed. Yesterday they talked about the muscle car parked out front. Today they murmured about the dented locker. The hallway became a thermometer. Some laughed, others frowned, the first spark of doubt in Bryce's reign. When the stares started to weigh on him, he leaned against the metal like a shield, surrounded by athletes who only knew how to laugh. Maya walked by slowly, backpack hanging off one shoulder, eyes straight ahead. The group's chatter froze in midair like a ball stuck on the rim. Bryce lifted his chin, waiting for her to bite, to show any crack. But Maya's silence cut deeper than any word. She let a barely noticeable smile slip. Not for him, but for the game taking shape. This time the board was all hers. From the first class that morning, Maya wore a forced calm on her face, born from the discomfort she'd carried since the day before. When she spotted Bryce in the hallway, she kept her stride steady, not even glancing his way. The simple snub made his lips twist. Bryce had always fed on other people's attention. Being ignored was the one language he didn't speak. By the lunch bell, the tension was almost tangible. In the cafeteria, Bryce decided to turn that tension into a show. He sat in the center, friends around him, legs spread, crooked grin waiting for an audience. The second Maya walked through the door, his voice sliced through the buzz. "Maya, you done crying over your locker yet?" The room dropped into a hanging hush. Lunchbox lids halted halfway to mouths. Without changing pace, she headed for the line, tray in hand, as if the jab had nothing to do with her. Bryce cranked up the volume, hungry for the cheap laugh. "Can't handle it alone? Maybe Big Shot Daddy will come fix it for you." This time, nervous giggles came out, coughs trying to dodge the awkwardness. Maya lifted her gaze, finally locking eyes with him. No anger, just a calm that hurt more than yelling. "Funny," she answered softly, but every syllable carried. "You talk about my dad like you weren't the one who almost wet yourself when he showed up." A few trays scraped, the laughter died, and for a moment, Bryce tasted the emptiness of someone who's lost his crowd. Conversation died without warning. Cups hung in midair, and Bryce, standing in the center of the dining hall, lost his grin. The circle around him shifted, unsure whether to laugh or pretend not to notice. His buddies felt the mood change and shrank back, waiting for the snap. Across the table, Maya lifted her fork to her mouth slowly, eyes unblinking. She wanted Bryce to feel the same discomfort he always served everyone else. He forced out a dry laugh. "You act tough just because your famous dad's fancy car drops you at the door?" he asked loud enough so nobody missed the scene. "Think you're better than us?" Maya lifted her chin steady. "Better?" "No," she said, voice calm. "I just don't have anything to prove." The words dug into Bryce like a splinter. Someone who spends life flaunting strength can't stand those who refuse the contest. Maya saw the muscle twitch at his temple, the fist that clenched and popped. The humiliation was too fresh for him to back off. She scanned the hall with a quick look, calculating distances and escape routes. She knew the next move would hit harder than words, and when it came, she'd answer in her own way, without raising her voice. Amid the espresso steam and the squeak of chairs, something ready to snap hovered over the tables. When the final bell rang, Maya took her time packing up. No rush. She preferred to let Bryce grow impatient. As she crossed the empty hallway toward the parking lot, she saw his reflection on the hood. Leaning against the car, arms folded, expression unreadable. None of the cronies had shown. This time it was a silent duel. Maya stopped before their shadows touched. She raised an eyebrow, like opening the ring. "Let me guess, going to say I'm just a tourist here?" Bryce let out a half sigh, something between tired and annoyed. "Not today. I just want to understand one thing." She crossed her arms, mirroring his stance. "Talk." Bryce watched her as if looking for cracks in the armor. When he spoke, his voice came out without mockery. "Why don't you ever fight back?" The wind rattled leaves that skittered between them. Maya glanced at the sky as if checking the forecast and then looked at Bryce. "Because I don't have to," she answered simply. He gave a short laugh, but it died fast. "That's not how the game works, Williams. People like me push. People like you push back or get crushed." Maya took one step forward, just enough to make Bryce square his shoulders. "Maybe you should ask yourself why you need to push first." A distant car engine started up, filling the air with a tense silence, the kind that signals another round is coming, not that things are over. Maya stepped forward once and dropped her voice to almost a whisper. "Or maybe my kind likes to wait. We let your kind keep pushing, tripping over yourselves, showing everyone how fragile you really are. Then, when you're stuck in the mess you made, we don't have to lift a finger. You already fell apart." Bryce kept his eyes on her. For the first time, Maya caught a quick flicker of uncertainty behind that confident mask, but he pulled himself together fast. "You think you got me figured out?" he asked, one corner of his mouth lifting in a smile that never reached his eyes. "You don't know anything about me." Maya held his gaze. "Maybe I don't know everything, but I know there's fear in there." Bryce's shoulder tightened. "I'm not scared of you." "Not of me," Maya corrected, with no sweetness in her tone. "You're scared of disappearing, scared you'll wake up and find out you don't matter unless you tear someone down next to you. That possibility freezes you." Bryce clenched his jaw. His nostrils flared with restrained anger. Maya could almost hear the debate in his head, strike back or walk away. But there was no comeback that could put the old swagger back in place. Deep down, he recognized the truth, shining too bright to hide. Bryce threw his hands up in exasperation, but Maya just shook her head. "I don't need to fight you, Bryce. You're already fighting yourself," she said, turning down the hallway. For the first time, he was speechless, crushed by his own silence. Later, the yellow kitchen light cast shadows across the table. Maya swirled the ice in her glass, soaking in the steady clink, while Vin Diesel leaned on the counter, eyes sharp. "Something happened today." She broke the silence. Vin arched an eyebrow. "With Bryce?" Maya nodded. "I got inside his head." A crooked grin spread on Vin's face. "Nice work." She let out a slow breath. "But that doesn't mean he's quit." Vin pulled out a chair and sat across from her. "Want to end it now?" You could expose him, put him on blast in front of everyone. You've got more power than you think." Silence settled again. Maya tapped the glass before answering, "No. I want him to end it himself." Vin smiled, almost proud. "Smart." Maya stretched, arms out, shaking off the day's tension. The ice clinked one last time, proof the story still had life. "It'll be a lot of work," Vin muttered, chuckling low. "Good thing I'm not short on patience," Maya said, lifting her chin. Inside, she was already counting Bryce Carter's last days. For weeks he'd been baiting her, sure she would cave. But the plan flipped on him. Maya saw the wear in the details. The way he looked away when she walked the hall, the stiff shoulders whenever he heard her name, the awkward silence from his friends when his jokes fell flat. The guy who bragged about controlling the board could barely keep the pieces standing. 2 days were all it took for the castle to crumble. That morning the school was like an anthill. Whispers seeped through walls. Muffled laughs slipped between lockers. Tight groups huddled in circles. Maya walked through the main door feeling all eyes swing toward her like compasses. Something big had happened, and she already guessed who was dead center. She followed the trail of stairs, heart steady, steps measured. The crowded hallway squeezed tighter as she neared. Suddenly a space opened up, like the crowd knew the decisive piece had hit the board. Shoulders back, head high, Maya glided through the buzz until she reached the core of the tension, ready to witness the moment the king finally fell. The whole hallway went still. A ring of onlookers clustered in front of Bryce's locker, phones raised. On the metal door, dozens of pages, screenshots of chats, comments, DMS. Every line dripped poison. Mockery of friends he called buddies, racist jokes, digs at teachers, attacks no apology could cover. The dates chilled anyone reading, all from this semester. Bryce appeared at the end of the hall, almost stumbling. He pushed past shoulders, shoved backpacks, cut a path. When he faced the paper wall, the color drained from his face. His heartbeat pounded so loud it seemed to echo in the metal. He ripped the first page in a nervous tear, then another and another, trying to erase evidence already immortalized in hundreds of photos. What is this crap?" His voice cracked, higher than usual. His fingers shook, strips of tape clung to his nails. Around him, whispers shifted from shock to disgust. Maya watched from the opposite locker, arms crossed, posture too calm for someone who detonated a social bomb. She didn't need to say a word. Her silence screamed louder than any accusation. Every camera click marked the collapse of a kingdom built on cheap sarcasm, and the faces that used to laugh with Bryce now watched the exact second he realized there was no escape. Bryce looked on, helpless, as the circle that once buzzed around him dissolved. Classmates drifted off in silence, unwilling to share his sinking ship. He turned to Maya. There was fire, but no swagger. No smug grin, no bravado, just raw anger jammed in his throat. "It was you," he growled, his voice stretched so tight it barely carried. Maya lifted her chin. "I just pulled back the curtain," she answered calmly. "What was behind it was always yours." The vein in his neck throbbed. His fists shook, hunting for a target. "You think you're better?" "No," she cut him off, stepping forward. "I just stopped pretending. Now everyone else has too." The hallway felt way too small for the fury swelling in Bryce's chest. Maya saw the moment he thought about crossing the gap with a punch, but the risk of proving her right held him back. He spun on his heels, shoving his way out as if ripping every piece of evidence from his path. Maya stayed until the echo of his steps faded, sure he was running with no way out. The empire of admiring stares he'd built had collapsed, and no one planned to rebuild it. Later, the sun slashed across the parking lot when she heard a deep engine growl. Vin Diesel leaned against the hood of a black Charger, arms crossed, expression calm. His steady gaze met hers, and a half-smile formed, promising directions the day hadn't yet revealed. Vin waited with the engine off, studying Maya as she slid into the passenger seat and let out a slow breath. "Is it over?" he asked. She nodded once. Vin lifted one corner of his mouth. "Didn't even need to raise a hand, huh?" Maya rested her head against the seat. "Not this time." His stifled laugh filled the Charger as he turned the key. The deep rumble cut through the parking lot silence, and the car rolled out of the school. "What's next?" Maya watched the empty hallways slide away through the window. In the past weeks, she'd seen alliances twist, lies crumble, and one big name wilt. She thought about Bryce, thought about herself. When she turned back to Vin, a small smile surfaced. "Now I'm going to live high school for real." He let out a quick whistle. "That's the Maya I know." The road stretched out ahead, and every yard peeled another brick off the wall, pressing on her chest. Maya realized she'd won not by shouting louder or hitting harder, but by waiting for the right moment and letting the facts speak. Bryce Carter would remain only as a warning. Power built on fear crumbles at the first gust of wind, and most times, it's the quiet one who lands the final blow.